This summer, we're inviting you for a very special double feature book study, diving into Small Groups, Big Results by Dr. Julia Lindsay and Rock Your Literacy Block by Lindsay Kemeny. Over 8 weeks, we'll dive into practical research-aligned strategies to help you build a more intentional literacy block, strengthen your small groups, maximize instructional time, and head into back-to-school season with a little more pep in your step. You'll get live weekly discussions, recordings, planning supports, and a community of passionate educators learning alongside of you. If you're ready for practical implementation and not just theory, come join us this summer. It's the summer of the Lindsays. Head to the link in the show notes to save your spot. You're listening to episode 102 of Literacy in Color. When students struggle with comprehension, our instinct is often to focus on comprehension strategies. But what if the real issue is that students aren't yet reading accurately, automatically, and with meaning? Joining me today is literacy researcher, professor, and fluency expert, Dr. Chase Young. In this conversation, we unpack what fluency really is, why it's so critical for comprehension, and how teachers can move beyond boring repeated readings to engaging, performance-based routines that students actually enjoy. From readers' theater and poetry slams to TEDdy Talks and the Read Like Us intervention, you'll walk away with practical, research-aligned ideas that can actually transform fluency instruction in your classroom. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a Science of Reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Literacy in Color. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Dr. Chase Young, who is a literacy expert renowned in the field when it comes to fluency, and that's exactly what we're going to be tackling today. So I just want to start off saying welcome to the show, and maybe you can give us a little background about who you are and what you do.
Sounds great, Michelle. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me. I am equally delighted to be on the podcast, so I really appreciate the invitation. Again, I'm Chase. I'm a former elementary school teacher where I spent the best years of my life teaching, but also playing. Recess, still my favorite subject. I'm now a literacy professor, so I teach big people how to teach small people how to read. And I love that because I'm actually in the elementary schools twice a week. So I'm still living and breathing all things elementary literacy. Fire drills are still a thing. So I'm still able to trade my carrots for flaming hot Cheetos. It's, these skills that are just timeless. So it's been 20 years I've been in education, maybe 21, something like that. And I know we all made probably a really great choice because every day is different. Every day is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I was saying before we hit record is I just love Chase's vibrancy, and these big people need to see, you can still be captivating in higher ed and how that can translate for our younger learners too. And I know you even had a book in the past about artful teaching, and that's something you're really known for, is just bringing energy and creativity and fun into the classroom. So from your researcher's hat, why is artful teaching and bridging that with the science really important to you?
Awesome. Great question. Well, the science is super important to me as a researcher and someone who knows that instructional time is limited and that we need to use the most impactful, most research, most evidence-based approaches known on the planet in order to accelerate the growth of our young learners. But we also can't make it boring. And sometimes We are locked in on coverage. We got to cover this standard. We got to cover this standard, which then becomes like the enemy of learning sometimes because, transfer and learning is where we're going with that. And I know, especially those of you that are still in the classroom, it's a challenge. And these kids, there's a lot of competition for their attention, right? And it's come to the point where, like, if they don't want to learn, some of them just won't. And it's unfortunate that we are put in this place where it's not expected when you go to school you will learn. It's now like, okay, teach what you got, And I like to actually answer that challenge with, I've got something awesome. I've got something amazing. So one of the we have three tenets of artful instruction. We call it creative, authentic, and aesthetic. And we understand that creative is, just something that we do as teachers. It's who we are. And obviously we want it to be authentic. We want it to go beyond the walls of our classroom. We want our students to understand what they're learning and how it can be applied in the real world. So it makes sense to them. Like, why am I learning this? Oh, gotcha. But my favorite is the aesthetic piece. And that's where it gets into this whole engagement. Aesthetics is essentially pleasing to the eye, right? Like, it's instruction that students want, instruction that students desire. And if we can provide that, that's what's going to accelerate the growth. We use the evidence, we build our foundation on that, and then we try to hook them and push them as far as they can with the artful piece, because without engaging them, it's going to be very, very challenging to get them where they need to be, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. And I say that because it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like their brains have been rewired in a different way in this technological age.
They sure have. I mean, there's plenty of evidence out there to support that as well. A lot of research being done on that. So, with their brains rewired, we have to adapt. Or we can just be frustrated and be like, these kids just won't learn. Or we can look at ourselves and say, how do I help these kids learn?
Yeah, 100%. And this is literacy in color. I actually have developed an acronym for colorful, and it's captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language. And so the magic's in the C, the captivate. And I love that how you talk about the aesthetic and the authenticity and the creativity, because I think that's part of the magic in teaching. And this whole accelerating growth, we can take a staircase, or we can take the escalator, or we can take a rocket ship. Like,
Yes, rocket
what
ship.
ways can we get there? Yeah.
Yes.
I
Oh, I
love it.
like that. And I love that acronym. Way to go. So you came up with that after,
Yeah,
correct? It's like a
yeah,
postdoc thing. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That was very well done. And the whole rocket ship, that's an analogy I'm going to steal from you. I hope you don't mind. I'll give you
There we
credit.
go. I love it. And so today we're going to be diving into fluency specifically. So before we get into the nitty gritty with strategy work and things that we can implement into the classroom, maybe we can just start with a quick definition of what it is, why it's important, and what's even misunderstood about fluency.
Sure. If we want to just be conversational about it, it's readers who read accurately, effortlessly, with expression that matches the meaning of the text. So within that, we have all of these components. One of the major ones being the accuracy piece, that they're able to decode and recognize words accurately, that they're reading at a pace. I like to use the term pace rather than rate, because appropriate pace insinuates that we may read at different speeds for different reasons. Like, for example, if we're giving a speech, we probably don't want to just zip right through it. We want to pause for effect, things like that. So, is it an appropriate pace? And I tell teachers a lot, they're like, well, that was 78 words per minute. I'm like, yeah, but you're professionals. Does it sound like it's an appropriate pace? Yes or no? Right? We don't have to constantly be looking at these different norms to be like, ooh, I don't know. Gonna have to hold them back for 2.5 words per minute, even though it sounded great, just not fast enough. So speed does matter, but it's not a race. And then the expressiveness is also extremely important. And that has a direct link to meaning. If they're reading out loud with expression that matches the meaning of the text, and they're beginning to process and understand, okay, what am I reading? And how can I read aloud in a way that conveys that meaning? So it's a wonderful indicator of reading comprehension. And a lot of studies have found a strong correlation between that particular component of reading fluency and meaning making. So that's one thing that we don't want to forget is that fluency is this bridge to reading comprehension. Therefore, comprehension is part of fluency, right? It is getting to that meaning. It's going from that decoding and word recognition, becoming more automatic with their reading so that they can think about what they're reading. So all of those kind of swirl together to create what fluency is. It's that beautiful bridge that we cross to begin to enjoy and understand what we read.
What a beautiful definition. I love the nuance in your word choice, even with pacing and such.
Mm.
And I really appreciate how you talk about fluency will match the meaning because oftentimes, even when we think about fluency strategies, it's like to have expression when you're talking, you to be animated and stuff. But I'm not going to read a medical journal in this way or like a literacy research study. Like in this study, we
Right.
found.
Propensity scored quasi experimental study, the non
Yeah.
equivalent control received. Yeah. I get it.
So that's a really great thing to take into consideration when we consider what fluency is exactly as well. And you referenced this bridge to comprehension a couple of times already. So how does some of those sub skills under fluency, like prosody and expression, lead to comprehension?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting, when I get calls from school districts and or a school or questions from teachers or they come to me, I go, my kids just don't understand. It's just having such trouble with reading comprehension. My question is inevitably, how fluent are your students? Is this an automaticity problem? Really is what my question is. And a lot of times it is. It's not always that way. It is possible to have a beautifully sounding reader that doesn't understand anything that they are reading, but that's more of an exception and not necessarily the norm. So when we think about this connection of reading fluency to comprehension, it goes back to that automaticity theory where as students become more automatic in their word recognition, the cognition, like the actual cognitive energy is kind of freed up so that they can think while they read. They're constantly trying to break these words apart, and they successfully make it through this text with 95% accuracy and 4 words correct per minute. And then we ask them, can you retell this story? And they can't. We shouldn't be surprised at all because they were just trying to get to the end. But what happens is as they become more automatic, they can then start to think about other things. Now, are they thinking about what they're reading? Maybe not. It could be, lots of times I'll be reading and I'll be thinking about something completely different. So there is a place for when that comprehension instruction comes in to help them connect with the text and give them a purpose for reading and things. But really, when it comes to fluency, it really is all about once they're able to peel these words off the page more automatically and don't have to use all their brain power, that they can then process as well, be thinking while they're reading. This is the instance theory, right? That's Logan 88. Sometimes you don't hear a lot about that, but then they're instantly thinking about the meaning and portraying it through their expressive reading. This is a highly complex process. And when they start to do that, you really honestly, you can sit back and be impressed and be like, wow, I feel like, and odds are, if you're reading out loud with expression that matches the meaning, that they're understanding it. So that's key. Once we get them there, and then it's less honestly cumbersome. I mean, who wants to just work really hard at the same thing every day and then come to find out, even though you worked really hard, you still didn't meet the goal of understanding? So let's stop making them feel bad, help them with their fluency, develop them into more fluent readers so that they can succeed. Because honestly, kids are going to school and failing every day, and no wonder they don't want to go back. We've got to provide opportunities for success. And a nice rocket ship way to do that is to develop fluent readers. Now, is fluency instruction for everybody? No. I mean, if you can't read and you can't decode, then obviously early fluency instruction by modeling and reading aloud with great expression, those types of things are important and can be done. But If they struggle with the phonics piece, they need phonics instruction. If they're disfluent, they need fluency instruction. And if they don't understand, it's possible that they need one of those two or both.
Yeah, definitely. And it's cool to think about how if there's a disconnect with comprehension, it doesn't necessarily mean they need comprehension work and comprehension strategies. It can scale back to, are they reading in meaningful phrases? Like, do they have that kind of understanding to figure out the syntax of a
Yeah.
sentence? And if not, or do they have a decoding issue? And so fluency can kind of really pinpoint where our instruction should land too.
Yes. And I'll just share this. This is a secret of mine. This is something that I believe, and you're welcome to take this secret. I'm just outing myself here. It is so much easier when someone says, my student needs fluency instruction, and I go, oh, I know what to do, than when they say, wow, they're really struggling with comprehension. Like, wow, that's way more complex, blah, blah, blah. Really hoping this is a fluency issue, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so much more when it comes down to, if you have that kid that's reading beautifully and they still don't understand, now you are perplexed. This is a much more challenging situation. So I think it's a good thing that fluency seems to be this foundational skill that, when addressed, naturally helps improve reading comprehension. So it's kind of an out for us.
Yeah. I love thanks for spilling the beans.
Yeah. It's just easier.
So it's also it's no secret now that you're very animated and you talk a lot about performance-based fluency. So maybe you can share a little bit about where performance-based fluency lives inside the literature when we think about this whole realm of the science of reading.
Sure, sure. So the performance based essentially is the artful approach to requiring repeated readings. Right. So we know that repeated readings in the late 70s, well, it's been used for a long, long time. But as soon as they figured out that there was a transfer and that repeatedly reading one text makes you better at another, then boom, people are all over it, right? And that's an example of the science. It's like, okay, repeated reading practice is essentially what it is. They're practicing their reading. They're purposefully trying to improve, they're getting multiple exposure to the same text so that they can feel some incremental success with each subsequent read. But my colleagues and I, and those of us that advocate for this artful instruction, go, well, boring. Now, in some cases, we'll use like really cool, engaging tests, like How to Torture Your Teacher by Bruce Lansky or something. So that if you're going to repeatedly read something, you might as well learn something in one important skill, which many of them are already blessed with that skill of torturing their teacher. But repeatedly reading that will really help to instill those skills. But if we take repeated reading and say, okay, what are authentic reasons for people to repeatedly read something or practice a text? There are so many real reasons. I mean, not just what you think of as actors or plays, but also like call center agents, YouTube voiceovers. This is a big one with kids now. They all want to be multi-million dollar YouTube stars.
Yeah.
That's essentially what they want to do. So let's go ahead and lean in on that. Be like, all right, here is a picture of hand sanitizer. I want you to write, or with the assistance of some sort of AI or a friend or a teacher, write some sort of hilarious voiceover. Okay. I want you to repeatedly read it, rehearse it. And then when you have the right timing, whatever, read it to a friend, get some feedback, read it to me. Let's make sure you're on point for a hilarious description of this hand sanitizer. I say that just because it was sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
But they're not repeatedly reading. What they're doing is practicing for this amazing voiceover. So there's so many reasons we should never, ever, ever, ever ask kids to repeatedly read something just to repeatedly read something, only because we have so many different options.
Yeah. And it's tricking them into practicing where
Yeah,
sometimes they don't even realize they're doing the
yeah,
heavy
Michelle.
lifting.
We're tricking them into learning these days, and that's another component of artful instruction, is duping them into engaging in what we want them to.
Yeah, yeah. And when we think about repeated reading with text that perhaps they didn't develop, is there any guidance on what kinds of text should be used or text length, things of that nature?
Sure, I'll tackle text length first. Long text can be boring. I mean, if you want to do all of Midsummer Night's Dream, expect some people to not pay attention towards the end, okay, or the third act or second act, even. Actually, maybe after the first line about wooing and scorning, they're done. But I recommend shorter text in length with higher concentrations of complex vocabulary and syntax and things like that. Because if you're going to rehearse something, you better perform it, which means we need an audience. And typically that audience is going to be the other students in the class. So we have to think about our audience. Are we going to lose them? Because part of the authenticity we don't talk about too is like audience reaction. I want to put a text in their hand that's going to entertain or crazily inform the audience to keep them engaged so that that reader up there is not only sounding great because of their rehearsal and their practice, but also they're getting that positive feedback from smiles or laughter or, oh my gosh, I didn't know that from the audience instead of, holy cow, I'm bored to death. We don't want to put kids in front of an audience that's going to be bored. We're setting them up to fail and feel bad about themselves. So, as far as text content, I've already kind of alluded to that is anything that other people might want to hear. And when you are repeatedly reading, it's a unique opportunity to think about content knowledge. If you're going to repeatedly read something and rehearse something for a performance or some sort of oral reading of it, then yeah, let's put some of the difficult concepts from science in front of them. Maybe turn those science concepts into knock knock jokes or tongue twisters or silly rhymes to help them remember some of the concept. This is a great opportunity to integrate content areas within our fluency instruction. But also, I mean, I'm a huge fan of just for entertainment purposes only. Find a classic story that they all love, like P.U. Is That You, Birdie by David Roberts, or any of the poetry makes great performance as well. So people will ask, do you have decodable readers theater scripts? I'm like, well, no, but you can make some if that's your purpose. It goes back to your purpose. What do you want them to be learning? You want them to learn content, use content. If you want them to be practicing some vowel patterns that you've been working on according to your scope and sequence, then use those. I wrote a piece for ILA where there was a lot of confusion on what text should I use for what. And I'm like, well, if you're teaching phonics, use decodables. If you're teaching about potatoes, use books about potatoes. If you're teaching fluency, then use texts that are meant to be read aloud, because this is one of the major ways that we develop our fluent readers is give them texts that were meant to be performed.
Those are such great tips. And thank you too for addressing the whole phonics thing, because I know that can be a big question out there. Like, do we practice kind of just right text? Do we practice a little bit of a stretch text? And this, essentially, I think the research on repeated reading is like there has to be a little bit of difficulty. Like, we're not going to practice something that we're already good at, right?
Yeah. Yes, and that's absolutely huge. And thanks for bringing that back up, because that's something I want to reiterate. If we're going to spend a lot of time on a text and we're going to give a lot of support, and we're going to have practice, then it better be high. It
Yeah.
better be challenging. They shouldn't be able to memorize it. This should be a very challenging text. And some research I just did with Jake Downs. The major finding was not just that we help kids become more fluent and build their vocabulary, but that we used really complex text and students were able to succeed. And in a day and age where teachers are asked, you need to be using grade level text, that's scary sometimes, because
Yeah.
I've been in your classrooms. I was in one yesterday. And it's like, I can't imagine giving a grade level text to every single one of the first graders that I was just with, because they can't do it. But not alone. Alone, they can't do it. Well, with the proper support and the practice that they can. So these approaches to reading fluency instruction are oftentimes to have grade level text in your classroom. There's a time for everything, right? And I think this is the spot. We don't want to put them in a book club with a grade level text and send them on their own and just expect them to get through it and have fruitful discussions and make lots of inferences. Well, because they're not going to be able to read it without you. So fortunately, every classroom has a teacher. Complex text and fluency instruction is key. That hasn't always been that way, right? And that's what I love about research is it evolves. This is science. It keeps getting better. We're practicing the science that we know that's best right now. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years, but all I can do to sleep at night is to do what I know is best today. Okay.
Yeah.
So like in the 60s, when Heckelman and Hollingsworth were doing their work with neurological impress, they advocated for easy tests. And in about 2015, when I was trying to publish on more complex text, I got a lot of pushback from reviewers. But the thing was, is the results were in.
Yeah.
You may argue with the theory, but unfortunately, these kids were able to tackle these complex texts. And since then, gosh, that was 11 years ago. And we continue to put them in challenging texts and have not had a problem yet. So,
And it's like the level of difficulty will depend on how heavy what kind of scaffolds are needed, and there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right?
amen, Michelle. Hell, louder for the people in the back and at the top of the mountain and underwater.
Does forming your skill-based groups feel a little mysterious? You have the screening data, but you're still asking, okay, how do I use this to move students forward? A good friend of the podcast, Dr. Stephanie Staller, runs the Reading Science Academy, and she created an exclusive grouping resource bundle free for Literacy in Color listeners. You'll get Stephanie's cheat sheets for grouping students at the beginning, middle, and end of the year, plus a video that walks you through a real classroom example. I'll always proclaim that I myself am a proud Reading Science Academy member for life, and I can genuinely say that the quality of the resources and professional learning is top notch. The Facebook community is also one of the most supportive spaces I've experienced. Reading Science Academy is honestly one of the first places I go whenever I have a question about literacy instruction or assessment. So go to readingscienceacademy.com/color to get your free grouping resource bundle today. So maybe we can get into a few of the performance-based strategies that you like to share about, and the first being reader's theater. So, I mean, a lot of people probably are already familiar, but just a quick synopsis. What is it, and how can we use it in the classroom?
Okay. In the words of my second grader in 2008, reader's theater is awesome.
There you go.
But if you want a definition, I would say the easiest way to think about it is groups of your students reading different texts that are adapted into scripts, rehearsing them systematically throughout the week, culminating in a performance, usually a week. And then the following week, they all get new text, new scripts. And then the next week, they get new scripts. So this is not only systematic through the week, where Monday we kind of read the scripts and then they think about what interests them. So I love to bring in choice and interest. Which one do you like? What group do you want to be in? Not here's your group. What group do you want to be in? And then they hear it. And that's really day one, is making that emotional decision to choose a text and be in that group. And then Tuesdays, we focus on decoding word recognition and support in any way that we can. I love Reader's Theater because it's a small group, whole group activity, meaning that they're all doing the same thing, but they're all in small groups, which frees you up so that you can visit all of these groups, listen in, lean in, and support where necessary. Now, Wednesday, we think about the meaning of the text, because Wednesday is all about expression, where we practice reading the text to match the meaning, whether it be nonfiction, fiction, poetry, song, whatever it happens to be. That's what we're trying to do. And then on Thursday, we bring it all together, make sure we know all the words, make sure we're reading it with good expression, and we think about our audience. We practice performance, maybe for another group, maybe for the wall, maybe just for the teacher. And then Friday, very importantly, we find ourselves an audience, whether it be parents, administrators, other classrooms, the kids in our class, whatever. As long as we have that audience, they've been prepared for success. Their texts are properly and appropriately selected, so that these audiences are just going to be blown away, and the kids are going to feel that success, feel that confidence from a great performance, but also see that reflect in the eyes of their audience. And there's nothing greater than having a kid who has typically been known to have a lot of difficulties reading aloud in front of others, to maybe difficulty with grade level material, who is provided so much scaffolding and support throughout the week that they can stand next to their peers and sound awesome and even entertain others. And if they do that week to week, after 32 weeks of this, of succeeding, their attitude towards school just changes. Instead of I'm not good at this, it's I'm really great at this. And people really seem to enjoy my skills. So, and it takes about 5 to 10 minutes a day, depending on the length of your script. Younger students, I implemented a teacher. I don't know why I said yes, but a teacher did ask me, like, okay, well, you've been to all the other classrooms, but I teach pre K and you haven't been to mine. I'm like, ooh, okay. So I went to a pre K classroom and implemented Reader's Theater. I did a 5 day format in an hour and a half in the same class. And guess what? They did it.
Oh my gosh.
And it was awesome. Now, I can't imagine doing that every single week. Obviously, the script was actually just like kind of the alphabet and sounds rather than actual, but it was kind of like A, B, C, cow, moo. Like it's really fun, but yeah, they got a lot of energy. Goodness. So shout out to all you pre-K teachers. Thank you for everything you do.
What a unique spin on it. That's so fun because even our youngest learners can take part in this work after their developmental level. No one's telling them to memorize just the words in the air, but it's the things that they're learning about and you're bringing it to life, which is so, so cool. I think the power comes in there's so much purpose behind it too. And I used to be a reading interventionist, and sometimes we'd read a book, we'd read a passage. I'm like, put a sticky note and draw a tally mark every time you reread it. Try to reread it 5 times just to get the practice in. But like you said, boring, right? I'm just
Right.
rereading for myself. But when I'm practicing with this sense of like, I'm gonna put this on as a special performance for my peers and how it can build such confidence in the learner. And that all goes back to the beginning. And now your attention for wanting to learn, you're invested. You're invested in the process.
Mhm.
So special.
Yeah, it's true because they honestly have their eye on the prize. When we don't give them some sort of prize, where's their eye? I mean, the whole objective is to get to that performance day and be awesome. And that's what they're thinking about. They're not like, oh, wow, I really need to be reading at 60 words correct per minute. And whew, I'm only at 2.5 on the multidimensional fluency scale. What am I going to do? Like, none of that is passing through their mind. It's passing through yours, maybe,
Yeah.
but not theirs. Theirs is to be awesome.
Yeah. And then another strategy that you sometimes share about are poetry slams.
Yeah.
So what would that look like in the classroom?
Cool. Very similar, except it's more of an individual thing. So they get to choose their own poems at the beginning of the week. They can be funny, they can be classic, they can be nonsense. It's whatever. It's totally up to them. Now we do have to assist because again, it comes down to audience. We don't want to put poor Chase up there with a ridiculously boring text, right? We love that they love that. But part of performance is considering your audience, right? And we don't want to make them feel bad because they like boring stuff. And that's relative, of course, but we need to know our audience. Every year it's going to be a little bit different. What are they going to enjoy? It's more of a conversation of, okay, yeah, I know that you love The Land of Nod. Great poem. I don't understand it personally, but awesome. But let's think about maybe what your peers want to hear. Let's choose something that you like that also will be well received by your audience. Those conversations come in a little bit because we really don't want them to set up to fail. We don't want a silent room when they get done reciting.
Yeah.
So we really don't. So we have to be very careful about that. They go through the same process. On Monday, they choose it. On Tuesday, they work on decoding, word recognition. Wednesday is all about expressiveness. On Thursdays, they practice for a partner, maybe three. So it could be that they practice for one partner, they thank each other, they give feedback. They go to another partner, they thank each other, they give feedback. And then a final partner. So they practice it 3 times. At this time, also, you are free to go around listening because my goodness, in all of these strategies, we want them to succeed. So if you're hearing some struggle or maybe somewhere where you should step in or provide more assistance or even ask a parent or a relative or a guardian to assist at home just so they can be successful, that's a great time to do it. And then again, Friday looks a little bit different because it's a poetry slam. So you have to dress in black and wear berets and you got to sit on a stool and you got to have
Yeah.
like lowered light, candles if you're allowed, decaf cappuccinos and snap clapping and all that. So it's got to be a real actual poetry slam.
I love it. I love it. And then when it comes to the partnerships conferring with each other, do you teach them how to give each other feedback?
Yeah. Otherwise, they're just gonna be like the same thing your kid says when you come home from school. "How was it?" "Good."
Yeah.
Good. So, I overuse language stems, or maybe I don't overuse them, maybe I just use them more than other people, but I created a lot of charts with how to comment on people's writing, how to comment on people's reading, how to coach them into expression. So, one of the biggest ones is, "Hey, why don't I try to read it a little bit differently?" So, instead of like, "I'm gonna correct you," "Hey, how about I want you to listen to me?" That kind of thing. So, like a modeling is a really good way to do it. But you can also give language gems like, I think you should use more feeling. You can kind of pick from them. You can use the child friendly on Tim Rosinski's website, the child friendly multidimensional fluency scale, for kids to actually assess themselves or assess themselves in pairs is a good way to do it. It's and hopefully that's used as a scaffold. We use a lot of rubrics in assessing our discussions and other places, but eventually we want them to internalize that rubric so that they don't need it anymore. When they get done, they know. It's like, okay, so my pacing was off here. Or I skipped all the punctuation and read the whole thing in a fast flob. Or I read out loud that we never found my dog again in a very happy voice. And that's sociopathic. So, really, what I need to do is bring that down to the sad voice. Or whatever. But so I would start with the model. This is how I might read it. Uh, we have a lot of that in, observation. Everyone's watching kind of thing, and kids are constantly like, "Oh, who's assessing me now?" Giving them an opportunity to just hear somebody else do it is kind of nice. And that comes down to teaching observations. Total side note, but we're doing this thing in my university where you go observe other professors, not to evaluate them, but to evaluate yourself, where you're watching them teach and going, okay, what are some cool things that I can do that I can take from this instead of all these punitive eval things. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was totally on my mind, but separate.
Yeah, totally. And it teaches us all to be reflective. What can I take away from that to make myself better in any capacity?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And is there any magic number to repeated readings?
Well, first of all, yes. But of course, with any magic number, there is a standard
But right, yeah.
deviation. There's a standard deviation, and that standard deviation can be tighter for some and larger for others, meaning that 4 appears to be a pretty good number. 4 with feedback, though. So that seems to be the more powerful one. If they've repeatedly read something 4 times and they get feedback on those, then we have a lot of power in that. But of course, you may have a student that only needs 1 and you may have a student that needs 10. But of course, when we talk means, the majority of them, a lot of them 4 will be sufficient. It may be slightly too much or slightly too little, but no huge impact. But there are going to be those students that will need more. So keep that in mind. That I recommend, like if you're doing readers theater, or you're doing poetry slams, or any sort of performance based fluency instruction in your classroom, that becomes an easy tutoring. Like I remember tutoring before and after school, and oh my gosh, I never knew what to do. And I didn't want to do it, to be honest with you. Like that's why mornings went way better, but like by the afternoon, school's out, and then I got these 5 kids that are going to stick around. I'm like, what are we going to do? And how is this going to be different than anything that we've already done? Okay, here's the stupid context clues board game. I don't know how it works. I think it's missing some pieces, but we've got about 20 minutes. That's but this is very specific because those students who need tutoring often need additional repeated readings with feedback. Therefore, their scripts and their the poems they have selected become the intervention text. And you can use approaches like neurological impress, read to impress, repeated readings, echo reading, choral reading, read like us, any sort of reading fluency intervention to support them and get them to be successful before their performance, because that's key too. Some of them are going to need more work, more than 4. They're going to need 5 days of you. But on Friday, when you see them succeed, it's worth it.
And I think that's the lovely part about turning this into a routine rather than a one-off activity because you're forcing the repeats while having the structure to have a focus. And this day we're working on decoding, and this day we're working on expression. And you make those artful decisions on like, oh, actually, this kid needs a little bit more help on that accuracy piece. So,
Absolutely. That dynamic pivot. It's so important. We
oh,
cannot
that
have our
part.
hands tied. It's like, well, it's four. They did
Yeah.
four. That's what the research says. Okay, well, let's learn about standard deviations then.
Yeah.
Also, margin of error. Also, everybody's a little bit different. So
It's
that's
not black and white.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that professional teacher who has that ear. You're ready or you're not. I mean, we do have a whole lot of these assessments that have norms and percentiles and point fours and whatever else. But truly, you teachers are amazing. And you can hear good reading from reading that needs more support.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And one more strategy I want to dive into before we tackle some intervention are called Teddy Talks.
Yeah.
So, share a little more about that.
Absolutely. So I originally called them TAD Talks, but years ago I was presenting on them in West Virginia. It was at the Greenbrier. I got done after presenting the TAD Talks and as a part of one of the talks, and a teacher came up to me and was like, I do those, but I call them Teddy Talks. And I was like, she's like, why do you call them TAD Talks? I was like, I don't know. I changed the E to an A. I don't know, like tadpole, like small, but I like Teddy better. So I stole it from
I
her.
love it.
Thank you very much. I don't recall your name. So Teddy Talks is essentially a TED Talk for kids. It's a one slide talk with content that has to be, again, entertaining, wildly entertaining for the audience. It's a series of bullet points of just crazy facts where students compile them, they put them together, they rehearse them over time. Could be 3 weeks, right? Because you have this, I guess I'll talk structure first. So they each of them will be in charge of a Teddy talk, and then they're assigned on different days. It could be that you have three a day. That's what I did. I had three. So at the end of class, you ended with three Teddy talks, and it took about 60 seconds. But the cool part is they've been practicing for 3 weeks for their big Teddy talk. And so the key then is also content. What is going to be in it? A lot of what they did were just strange facts. So, like strange science facts, for example, was very popular. Like a child will stand up and say, here are strange facts about space. And they just give these bullets as they pop up. I have them do the auto thing. So they're each one. And then they say thank you at the end. Like if you were to drive directly into the air at 60 miles an hour, it only take you an hour to get to space. Or your nose gets warmer when you lie. Just strange facts where like the Eiffel Tower is, I can't remember if it's shorter or taller in the summer, but interesting little tidbits where they're like, oh, well, a lot of it ended up with the strange state laws. Like depending on, they pick a different state one year. Yeah, they all pick different states, and they just went through the strange state laws that are still on the books that aren't enforced. Like, in Texas, it's illegal to eat cheese on Sunday, or you're not allowed to feather dust in public buildings.
In New Jersey, it's illegal to pump your own gas.
Yeah, yeah, see, yeah, it's strange things. You're not allowed to sleep on the sidewalk between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. Or like in Colorado, you can own a catapult, but you can't use one. So it's just these strange little things. That's the idea, is to get these little bullets of highly engaging factual information, and they rehearse it for however long they have in between their Teddy Talks. And they get up there and boom, 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 they Teddy Talk. You can use a spotlight. I highly recommend Spotlight, aka flashlight. And then their Teddy Talk's done. And they have to compile a new one. If they're older, they can create them on their own. If they're not, you may have like a Teddy Talk day or some time set aside where everybody works on it. And then they'll all have a chance to rehearse until their scheduled Teddy Talk.
I love that.
It's repeated readings with a little bit more from them, a little bit more ownership of what they're doing. And then with like the whole, I'm going to entertain my friends with these crazy facts.
That is so cool. And talk about knowledge building.
Yeah,
You're getting some really cool information, and you're also developing kids who are going to have something really interesting to say at the dinner table.
absolutely. And, trivia night.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like, I remember this. This was in a Teddy Talk in my third grade class.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of things that stick, definitely. I'd love to dive into intervention now. And you referenced Read Like Us. I actually saw We're recording in April, and just last week, a new study came out with Jake Downs,
Yeah.
April 17th, right? Just recently, hot off the press, about the effectiveness of Read Like Us and complex text and that kind of thing. Did you co-develop that with Jake,
Yes.
the intervention program? So maybe you can share what it is exactly and how it's structured.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it all came from a teacher came to me, liked my intervention called Read Like Me. And Jake was just graduating. I served on his dissertation, which was an amazing dissertation. It won awards. He did a wonderful job. If
Yeah.
you have 6 days and an encyclopedia, you should read it. But it came from a teacher going, we can't do one-on-one stuff. It's just not feasible. We're so sorry. And I was like, okay, let's figure this out. And Jake was eager to research and I was eager to answer this question. So we put our brains together and just did a mashup of effective reading fluency strategies, essentially, and tried to put them in a logical sequence of gradual release, right? So, like teacher responsibility and in due time, primarily student responsibility. So we started with kind of a time frame. We're like, we want the intervention to last about 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, we need to find texts that are engaging, about 200 words long. So what are these students going to do? Well, in small groups, a trained tutor or teacher, paraprofessional, volunteer, at this point, we'll take anybody, right? Will model the read aloud. Read it aloud to the students while they kind of just silently follow along. We read with great expression that matches the meaning of the text. We are essentially saying, read like us. This is how we're reading. Eventually, you're going to read like us. And that's kind of where the name came from. It was also a spin from Read Like Me. So after the model read, we do an echo read. So essentially, I'll read a line and then the students will read a line back and then we'll keep going. Now, if they're older students, we may read multiple lines. We usually keep it to one, but if they can handle it, do more. And then after that, we do a choral read. We read that together out loud, and you may do more than one. It's possible. Again, this is just a framework. If like the echo read is not working so well, you don't like it all that much, maybe two choral reads, right? But this is the general framework. So once you get through the choral reading, you read it together, you have this partner reading or partner choral reading. They read it chorally with a partner or a trio. Just depends on the number of students in your group. Typically, if there's an odd number, I'll just pair up with the other student because I get bored and I like to participate. It is. And then after that, they do a performance read. So again, we have our model read, we have our echo read, our choral read, our partner choral read, or partner reading, and then a performance. That's essentially where they perform their parts. You can assign different parts, or it can be a choral performance, or all the boys can read this line, the girls will read the next, and they'll alternate. Or, in some cases, when you could send them to an important person in the school where they could read the text to them because they're relatively short. Or if like time is of the essence and they can't go anywhere, they just kind of whisper read it to you at their own pace, just so that they have this. I started, the teacher started, and in the end, they're doing it on their own. Those texts, again, are highly complex, usually about 2 years above their grade level. But they were also curated to be very interesting, highly engaging texts. These kids were asking to bring the text home afterwards. They were like, we love this because the state laws were in there, scary stories with a twist, some campfire stories like the vendor viper, which if you haven't heard that one is fantastic. There's some heartwarming ones. And then there's just random ones like, who's the real Dracula? Why do we have daylight savings times? What do different types of engineers do? What's civil versus chemical versus, what are the differences here? So just random stuff that we thought would be interesting. We paired them. We did a matched quasi-experimental study, and we compared them to a existing intervention curriculum that was working really well. And ours worked a little bit better. And it was free.
Yeah.
That's the killer. That's what I loved about it. They were paying a lot of money to a publisher. I don't think I'm supposed to say, so I won't, to get these similar results when we did it for free. And we focused on reading fluency and comprehension, vocabulary, those types of things. Found that it was very beneficial for students reading fluency as well as their vocabulary, but and particularly helpful for emergent bilinguals. This new study that Jake did with Freddie and colleagues from the text project looked at vocabulary specifically. Now they secured their texts from, can't remember where they got them. It was not me spending a few months trying to find my favorite text in the world, but they did procure a good text set for that. And if you want my text set, I will, in the show notes, I'll be sure to give you a link where you can just go to it, put your email in, and it'll automatically send it to you. Those are publicly available because copyright's an issue. It's gray area, educational use only type thing. So I don't need it. So yeah, and that's essentially we did that for a year and or 50 consecutive interventions, and they did really really well. There is no silver bullet in reading instruction and intervention. Obviously, I mean, we would like to say that there is a tier one curriculum out there that's going to teach every single kid to be on proficiency, and that is a wonderful dream. And I want it to be true. Realistically, according to some research in the 90s, maybe more like 96%. So there always is going to be a need to shore up some of these gaps. I just think that it's important that we have lots of options because if something's not working, we need to go to the next thing. And then if that's not working, we go to the next thing. So having all these options is great.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talk about your 5-step approach, is that across a session or across a week or like several days?
I'm so glad you brought that up because we get that question emailed all the time. It's whatever you can do. The way that it was done in the study was one session. All of those things were done in about 20 minutes because we keep the text short so that we can go through all of those steps and that they can go from that teacher model and gradually release the responsibility to the students by the end where they can hear themselves and be successful. And then boom, the next day they're on a new text. If you have to drag it over a course of a couple of days, that's fine. It's whatever really works with your context. The more practice they get, the better. And there is this confounding variable out there in reading fluency research that I'll spill the beans on this one too, is when we have kids reading aloud, we know they're reading. It could be that they're actually reading for 20 minutes a day instead of going home and indicating that they're reading for 20 minutes a day, even though they're not. Or if you're still doing independent reading in class, whether they're staring at the wall for those 20 minutes, we don't
For
know.
those kids who get really good at like, I think it's a good time to turn my page.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. One of those. So we know that with performance based fluency practices, they're reading because we hear them doing it.
Yeah. So powerful. So powerful. I'm so grateful that a resource like that exists. And is it organized by grade level bands or if somebody was to look into the using the intervention?
You mean the text from me?
Yeah.
So the texts that I compiled were specific to that population of third and fourth graders. So they're all about fifth and sixth grade levels. So I recommend as low as using them in second. And you could probably get to fifth as well, because between second and fifth for these particular texts, because they're either going to be reading on grade level or above. All of those students. Now, other research obviously needs to be done and I think is in progress using those kids in first grade who are ready for it, who are ready for that intense reading fluency. Wouldn't call it intervention, but extension. They're like, okay, we can decode. We've been haggard reading, but our arms are tired. Our arms are tired. We're ready to read and we're ready to become extremely fluent. So offering it to students that are high flyers as well in the younger grades, kindergarten, first grade is also an awesome thing. Like if you have like a watchdog program or something like that, or volunteers to take those kids that don't necessarily get that, hey, let's go. Let's just take you as far as we possibly can and give you some serious attention. That might be a good option for them too.
So that's awesome. This can be intervention and it can be enrichment.
Yeah.
It could be for
That's
anyone,
the key
really.
word I was looking for. I'm like, extension, what is it?
Yeah, something with an E.
Enrichment. Appreciate that, Michelle.
I love that. I love that. So, this has been so helpful to hear about not only the fun routines that any teacher can do in the tier one setting, but also read like us to bring to the small group table. And for the teacher who's like, yes, I want to do that. I want to try that. Where can they find some of these resources?
Sure. Currently, Read Like Us, I did a quick little Google. It's everywhere right now. Thanks to everyone that has been sharing it and the research. Thank you to Utah State that has made it open access. So you can actually read without having to pay for all of that. So I would say start with the article that we published in The Reading Teacher because it was written for a teacher audience. It gives you the steps. So identify a time, identify who is going to run these groups. And if you have to train somebody, do it. The text, procure the text that you know that your students will engage with. Like that's extremely important, not only of their interests, around their interests, built around your curriculum if necessary, if you'd like to do some knowledge building, but make sure they're awesome. AI generates some real garbage. If you say like, "Hey, make this silly," it just uses words like silly. It's not funny. And like you're like, "Hey, make this story funny," and they're like, "Oh, well, now they're just going to call him Funny Sam,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
make him do anything funny." So be careful with that, and be careful with those texts that you choose because that's extremely important. Make sure they're not too long because they are going to read them 5 times, or they'll have at least heard them 5 times. And yeah, make sure that they're challenging. Make sure that they're beyond what they can do on their own, well beyond. We find the sweet spot to be about 2 years above what you might think their ability is.
Amazing. So
Yeah,
helpful.
I know. It's really cool to have them like picking up texts and going, wow, this is what everybody else is reading. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that in my own daughter. My older daughter's in kindergarten and, me being who I am, I taught her how to read before kindergarten. We're doing
Yeah.
like, all the CVC word and she was choppy with the simple decodables and all of the sudden, like she can pick up anything and read it. I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, just because we're reading it at home together. Like she didn't learn this in phonics yet either. So she's gonna be her first grade dream. But it's
Yeah,
true. You stretch them and they grow.
absolutely. Yep. Can't forget about them.
Yeah, definitely. Any final words of wisdom that you want to share about fluency?
Yeah. Fluency is amazing. Once you get those kids decoding and working on that word recognition, pushing, helping develop their fluency is not only fun for us, and there's a lot of great research and artful approaches to doing it, but also that's where they see their hard work begin to pay off because they've heard good readers their whole lives, reading aloud to them, reading them in you, just in general. And they're finally joining that club where they're yeah, sure. Okay, you can read this word off. It's a CVC. I'm able to break that down. But when you start to sound like an adult reader, that's where you're like, and I have arrived. So it's really a great place to be for students and for teachers. So be sure, final words, fluency instruction is important. Make time for it. This is not a, oh gosh, we forgot fluency. We should do that tomorrow. That's not what it is. I mean, Tim Shanahan recommends 30 minutes. If you follow Shanahan on literacy, he recommends 30 minutes of reading fluency instruction. And this is dated research, but it said back in the day, people are spending about less than 6 on probably one of the more important, it's a bridge, right? We have to build that bridge. And therefore, we need to dedicate the time. So find structurally where you're going to put some of these strategies. If you'd like to alternate between reader theater and poetry slams, also Read Like Us, great for tutoring. Don't put them on the stupid context clues board game. Engage them in actual reading of complex text. This is your opportunity to support them outside of school and in a tutoring setting with grade level text, meeting that expectation that everyone tells us to do. And we say we can't, but in this context, we can. So utilize that tutoring time in better ways than I did. I got to tell you, as soon as I actually started using some of these strategies, like, oh, this is what tutoring is supposed to be. So, final words also have a good time. Remember, don't take this too seriously. We've got to just loosen up a little bit. I know everybody wants us to be on page 142, but guess what? You think they're going to fire us for being one page off in this current state of no one wants to teach? There's empty classrooms, there are lights off, we can't get subs world. Tell them you'll get to it tomorrow. Anyway.
Yeah. Chase Young just dropped the mic. The mic has been dropped.
Oh, so yeah. It's just enjoy yourself. Remember why you got into this whole thing and be happy that we are surrounded by so much evidence. We know what works. And now let's make it work for our students. Make those nice little adjustments that's going to make it more artful, being creative, authentic, and aesthetic for your
Yeah.
students.
Yeah, and it brings the joy into teaching. Again,
Yeah.
it's rather instead of just having a box to check. Like, I think I tackled it, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Some job satisfaction right there. Enjoy every well, not every moment. Enjoy lots of the moments. How about that?
Most of the moments. Yeah, yeah.
Love it. Love it.
So this has been such a pleasure. I'm, like, smiling ear to ear the whole time listening to you speak. That
Well,
was,
thank
so
you.
insightful.
Super enjoyable. I really appreciate you inviting me and spending your time with me today.
Yeah, and where can listeners connect with you further?
Sure. I will send you links for the notes, but thebestclass.org is where you're going to find all the reader theater scripts and some other resources as well, some intervention ideas. If you're looking for professional development, Literacy Live, there'll be a link there. If you're looking for the Read Like Us text, I'll have a link for you there where you can just pop your email in and it will send it automatically to you. And then, oh yeah, we have parent resources now. LFC reading is going to be linked. You can send that to your parents. There'll be like guides that they can work with students, some free guides or whatever that they can work with their kids over the summer, so that next year's teacher will be happier when they get there and they haven't slid back any amount of months. So you can always contact me. You know where I am. You see on social media. You can email me, whatever you want to do.
Perfect. We'll link it all up. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. It helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully. Do you ever catch yourself saying, English is just crazy? Maybe your students come across a tricky word and you tell them, you just have to memorize that one, or this is the part you have to know by heart. But deep down, you know it's still confusing. Here's the truth. English isn't random. It's a wonderfully complex system, and once you understand how that system works, through sound, structure, and meaning, everything changes. That's what Sarah, Paul, and I teach inside Mastering Morphology. This isn't another curriculum. It's deep teacher knowledge inside a practical, comprehensive course that finally shows you how words really work. No more exceptions, no more gimmicks or patching holes with memorization or phonics alone. It's time to go beyond sound it out and give your students the framework they need to truly understand words. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start teaching with confidence, join us inside Mastering Morphology. Enrollment is open now, so we invite you to click the link in the show notes to get started.